everyone, it's Nat or Natalie with the Idaho Federation of Families, and today we are going to be discussing confidentiality and your mental health rights and your mental health records. I'm here today with Kayla. Kayla, do you want to do a little introduction?
Hi, everybody. My name is Kayla, and I'm an attorney at Disability Rights Idaho. I work in the youth unit, and I'm here to give you a little bit of a legal perspective on some of your rights with confidentiality when accessing mental health services.
Fantastic. So let's just start right off. As a minor, who can access your medical record?
So a lot of you may have heard of a thing called HIPAA. HIPAA is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. It's a federal law that protects sensitive patient health information from being disclosed without the patient's consent or knowledge. And under HIPAA, as a minor, your parent or guardian is your personal representative and they may access your medical records. And there's a lot of good that can come from this, like if you break your leg and are taken to the emergency room, your parents, they probably have to pay that hospital bill. So they need to access your medical record to pay the bill. They also might have to make sure that insurance billed correctly. They also are going to be the ones taking care of you when you come home. So they need to know what happened and how best to take care of you. And they need to have that communication line open with the doctors. So there's a lot of good that comes from them being your personal health representative and being able to access that information. But there are also instances where as a minor, your parent or guardian does not have automatic access to your medical records.
So what are some situations where a parent or a guardian would not immediately have access?
So the situations where a parent or guardian would not have automatic access to your medical records, they typically follow where a minor has the right to consent to their own medical treatment. And we talk about this more in our other video. The topic is accessing mental health treatment. But there are some instances in Idaho where as a minor, you can consent to your own medical treatment. And so some examples of this, and this is not a complete list at all, but like if you are emancipated or if you are getting treatment for an STD, and then also if you are over the age of 14 and you have consented to your own mental health treatment. These are all situations where the parent or guardian is not considered your personal health representative and would not have automatic access to your medical records.
Okay, so just for like clarification, once you're 14, you can start seeking mental health treatment like for yourself on your own.
Yes, so normally a minor may not consent to their own medical treatment, but there's an Idaho law that allows minors 14 years of age or older to access their own mental health treatment.
Okay, wonderful. So as a minor, am I always able to keep my mental health records confidential from my parents, or do they need to know like exactly what I talk about in every therapy session?
So that's a really good question. So when we keep records confidential, that means that your parents can't access it or can't see what's in your mental health record. And the standard for confidentiality is actually even higher for mental health services. In Idaho, a child over the age of 14 generally has the right to access and amend their own record as it relates to mental health treatment. So this is going to be, I'm going to give you the long definition here, which is that no person in possession of confidential statements made by a child over the age of 14 in the course of treatment for mental health services may disclose such information to the child's parents or others without the written permission of the child, unless disclosure is necessary to obtain insurance coverage, to carry out the treatment plan, or to prevent harm to the child or others. So the long answer is no, you're not always able to keep your mental health record confidential from your parents. But when we break down that big long sentence and we look at it, we see that the standard and the rule is that your statements should and must be confidential unless one of those exceptions applies. And so going back and looking at those exceptions, your counselor, therapist, psychologist, whoever your mental health care provider is, they could get your written consent to share information with your parent or guardian, and that's one of the exceptions. The disclosure could be necessary for insurance coverage, and the instances where that comes up is usually just with diagnosis. So your therapist or your psychologist diagnoses you based on some of your statements. Your provider is not going to tell your parent what you said for that diagnosis, but they can tell your parent you have that diagnosis so that your parent can go tell insurance about that.
Mhm.
And then the last reason that they may need to disclose confidential statements is if it's necessary to carry your treatment plan or if it's necessary to prevent harm to you or others.
Mhm.
Yeah, so those are general rule. Statements must be kept confidential, but as with most things, there are exceptions to the rule.
So, along the lines of preventing harm or just harm in general to you or others, if I was a victim of sexual violence or sexual trauma, would I be able to access mental health care for that trauma and keep that confidential from my parents?
So that's a really good question, and there's a lot of nuanced rules that kind of govern, um, reporting of harm to a child. So we kind of talk about that more. We have a special video just for that topic. It's confidentiality in treatment of sexual trauma. But a short answer to your question is yes, you should definitely get treatment. And then if you do have concerns about what statements could be shared with your parents, with law enforcement, with anyone else, go take a look at that video and we'll talk about it more there.
So, when thinking about what is and will stay confidential and what won't stay confidential, if I'm unsure about something I'm going to say to my provider, if that's going to stay confidential, how can I go about asking if it's going to stay between us or if it's something that my parents will be informed about?
So the best thing you can do in that situation is just ask your provider, ask that individual who's providing you mental health care, will this information be kept confidential? And you can either try to get some clarification before you reveal what you want to say or
Mhm.
after the fact. But the bottom line is that these mental health care providers, they all have ethical standards that prevent them from lying to you, their client. Um, so if they say that they're not going to share that information with your parents, like that should give you some assurity that that won't be shared with your parents because um, they're not allowed to lie to you, and
Mhm.
I don't think that they will. But if you are over the age of 14 and you want to speak freely with your counselor about an experience or an emotion and you don't want your parents to know, just ask them and verify with your provider. It's very likely that the response they give you will be something similar to what we just discussed. They'll
Mhm.
say, I keep everything in here confidential, except if you are going to, if I think that there's a harm of danger to you or someone else, or I need to let your parents know for your treatment plan. So it's very likely that they'll say something to that effect. And basically what that means is unless one of those exceptions that we talked about applies, your information will be kept confidential.
Wonderful. Okay, that is a really great explanation of everything. I feel like that covers all of the major questions that we usually get faced with. Because it is kind of difficult for minors to access care if they don't really know which direction to start heading and where certain things are going to be kept confidential and certain things do have to be released to their parents and all that sort of stuff. So thank you so much. That's very insightful, and I think that will definitely help us going forward with other youth and the care that we can provide for them.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Nat.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.